Welcome to Sakshi TV special immigration show with lawyer Srinivas Kaveti from KavetiLaw Firm. Please note that Sakshi TV now has 4 immigration shows every week. On Tuesdays at 5:30 with lawyer Srinivas Kaveti, Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Ms. Prashanti Reddy in English, Thursdays at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Chand Parvatneni, and on Friday at 6 p.m. EST with Banu Nidra. Please tune in to ask your questions. If you are an immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call us at 866-725-7441. Before we begin the show, please note that the information provided on the show is not legal advice and use of content is for general informational purposes only. Sakshi TV or its agents in the USA or our guests on the show are not responsible for the use of information as legal advice. If you need specific legal advice, please contact the attorneys directly. His law firm, KavetiLaw Firm, is headquartered in New York City and is an international law firm with a global footprint operating through their offices in Australia, Asia, Europe, and North America. They help individuals and companies deal with their legal matters. Their innovative approach to legal representation had made them the #1 choice for clients around the world. KavetiLaw focuses on international law and has strong reputation on handling international businesses, investments, and immigration-related matters in the United States, Europe, Australia, and Asia. So without any further delay, let's welcome him onto our show. Mr. Srinivas, how are you? Welcome to our show.
Good. Thank you, Shivani. Been good.
Yes. So Kaveti Garu, today we thought we will discuss a little about FDNS and its purposes. So without any further delay, let's get on to the topic. So Mr. Kaveti, what exactly is FDNS and what are its purposes? Why is it used?
Okay. When the immigration, what they do, they want to check up if they want to investigate, because what is FDNS, first of all? It's a Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate. What do they do? For example, if anybody is going to the embassy, let's say for a visit visa or for a work visa, or even somebody is getting married for any immigrant visa, what they do, they will, if they want to, the consulate authorities, if they want to investigate and find out whether it is a bona fide application and whether the employer is bona fide, or in terms of H-1B, if the client is bona fide, what they would do, because you must understand the consulate authority comes on, it's like, the way we have it in India is called Foreign Affairs. It comes under the, State Department of State. The Department of State will not have law enforcement guys to investigate certain fraud detection. So this is a separate department, which is a federal agency. Federal means they can go and check up all over United States, and including Hawaii and other islands of US. They can check up. They are basically like policemen, fraud investigators. What they would do, they would like to see whether the information provided to the consulate authorities, whether it is bona fide.
Okay.
Means, is there any truth in it? So these guys will detect the fraud, if there is any fraud. Many times what happens in, especially in H-1B situations, a lot of times these employers and employees, they manage client letters. And they want to see whether this client is bona fide. And they want to see whether this job offer is bona fide. And they want to see whether this project which perpetrated to be, offered to the employee, what they have shown it in H-1B petition, whether is it bona fide. Means what they will do, the investigators will go and basically do a physical verification. First, they will do an online verification, and then second, they do a physical verification. And we don't know who is coming, actually. These are actually inspectors. They're basically like a policeman, undercover policeman. And that's their job, Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate. This is actually made only a few years ago. The reason is, if you see the history, because of this 9/11 situation, when the students came from Middle East and they went to school for English, and they've taken the credit cards, because in those days, the credit card companies, they used to give credit cards for even students without any social security. So because they have taken the money from the banks, they have used the credit cards, they went and attacked the 9/11 attack. From that time, the whole gambit of law is being changed in US. And since then, and even because the H-1B, because if you see the history of US, the H-1B has become more popular from Y2K. Before that, it was not that popular. Why? Because of IT revolution, and most of them are coming from India. So when these companies, they were coming up like mushrooms, and they were sponsoring their own family members, and many of the employers, whom I know, a lot of them went to jail. They were cooking up papers like tax returns and pay stubs and client letters and even company documents. So they discovered that a lot of fraud is being committed. So the federal government has established a department 15 years ago to detect the fraud. That's what it is. It's called Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate. That's what it is.
So, Mr. Kaveti, you just said that these officers are like undercover agents. So, are you saying that these site visits can be all of a sudden? And also, what kind of site visits do they perform? Or do they even go attend the audits if it's possible?
Okay, one must understand, Shivani, if the way the immigration works, there are 2 to 3 tier steps of auditing. When you make an application with immigration, the first time when an employer or even a sponsor, what they get is a first check is called a request for further evidence. That means when you get an RFE, which is popularly called RFE, what the immigration is trying to do, they are trying to get information through online resources. They will go online, they will see the address of the employer, they will see the address of the person who got married, they will see the background. So basically what they do, when the immigration is not able to find some information, what they do, they will send an RFE. That's a first step audit. And if the lawyers and the employers and petitioners and beneficiaries can handle it properly, what they do, the second step is, giving this case to the fraud detection unit. And once these immigration also does it, even USCIS does it, and even the consulate does it. Sometimes even the IRS does it, and even the Department of Labor also does it. So they're taking the use of an agency. These are police officers, and they're federal police officers. They can come anytime. They will basically give a call, and they will come and check up the employer's premises. They will go to the client's premises. They will see whether the guy is really working there, and they will also investigate with the employer supervisor or manager. They will ask whether this guy is really working, is that project is bona fide, and what level this employee is working, and is the client letter bona fide? Did the vendor or the client, did they gave this contract? Is it bona fide? That means they will check it up with the employer as well as the supervisor or the manager of the client. And sometimes in the marriage cases or in terms of L1 petitions, the officers physically visit. Sometimes when they get married, they could randomly come and check up whether you really got married, whether the husband and wife are living together. Many times there are sham marriages. People just do it for the sake of paperwork. These officers, they'll come and check it out. They'll knock your door and say, hey, are you guys living together or not? Sometimes they will even inquire with the next door. Do you understand what I mean? And there was a lot of times, even there was R1 visas. What happened is a lot of religious workers came into the country, and there was a big scam by this Pakistani priest. What he did, he filed many applications from a basement. So, now when you do an R1 petition, which is a religious petition, the officers, they will really come and physically verify the premises. And in that case, even in the past, there were a lot of journalists also came into United States on an I-1 visa, I visa. Even that was a big scam. So, when they see all these scams, they physically come, they will physically verify, and they want to see whether you're really performing the job, what you mentioned in the petition. So if they find out that it is not bona fide, if they see any iota of doubt, if they see that if it is a fraud, it's an imprisonment, it's a felony. And many employers have gone to jail, and many clients have been in trouble, and many beneficiaries, H1s, have been denied or revoked. And in many cases, even the marriage petitions, they've been denied.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, what is the authority for the FDNS to conduct these kind of site visits or audits?
Under the federal law, because they have every authority like a policeman, because immigration law is a federal law. It's not a state law. And these guys are all federal guys. And they can go to any corner of United States, all the states, even the Hawaii and outside islands. They have every right to go and check it out. And the other thing is, in immigration law, it's a very classic thing that if somebody stole something, right? If the policeman wants to do a search of a premises, you have to go to a magistrate or a judge and get a search warrant. But in terms of immigration law, this is an exception to the general rule that in immigration law, to check up an employment details, you don't need a search warrant. You can just walk into a premises and show that you're a FDNS guy, even immigration officer or an ICE officer. You can just show your ID, walk into the premises. You can search the premises. You have every right to walk in, just like a police officer. And sometimes police officers need a search warrant. In terms of immigration law, if they smell that there is any fraud perpetrated, they don't need any search. They can just go and find out. They just call the employer. They go to different places to search. And repeatedly, the law said that they have every right to walk in. They don't need a search warrant. So that means they have every right to walk in to any place if they smell that there's a fraud perpetrated in immigration law.
Yes. Mr. Kaveti, are you saying, how you see in these Indian movies, how these income tax officers just come up randomly and they keep checking? So, is it a good idea for the people who are getting checked to cooperate or to decline to meet or respond to these kind of site visits?
Wonderful question. Well, sometimes there are certain constitutional rights. You have Miranda rights in this country. What is a Miranda right? If some police officer comes to you, you could exercise your constitutional right and say, hey, I cannot see you, but can you give me some time? I will only speak in front of my lawyer. So I want a lawyer in my presence. Even the employers have a right to have their attorney. And even the beneficiaries or even the clients, they could say, hey, we want our lawyer to be present if you want to ask us any questions. They cannot deny. But the officers have to give them a reasonable time. And most of the times, because this is an administrative visit, they're not coming to arrest anybody. So it's called administrative site visit. Immigration law is an administrative law. It's not a criminal law or a civil law because it's an administrative law. They're trying to see if there's any fraud perpetrated on the government of US, number one. Number two, they're seeing if there's any security issues in the country. See, not what happens in this country, if you see 9/11 before and after, there were a lot of, Athangwandis in the country. They were doing all frivolous petitions, these terrorist groups, and they were doing all frivolous petitions, and they were attacking the country. So in such circumstances, they have every right to come and check it out. But normally, they will not be that harsh. They will they will call before, they will make an appointment, and they will come and check out your record keeping. See, again, record keeping law is very important, compliance. Whatever the documents they ask, you should have the access of it and you should be able to show them. And they have every right to even get a copy of it.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, what are the steps an employer or an employee should take if anybody from the FDNS approaches pertaining to the site visits? So, if they are given a heads up that, the people from FDNS are going to come visit you, so what are some precautionary measures that the employee or the employer must take?
The first and foremost thing is record keeping, Shivani. The employers have an obligation to maintain certain records under the LCA, under the Department of Labor, under the immigration law, under the tax law, and under the certain state laws. You're required to maintain certain records in the office if it is an employer. And by law, many of the employees don't know this in America, that the employer is obligated to provide an LCA copy, labor condition application, to the employees. How many employees know this? They don't know this. And none of the employers will hand over a labor certified application copy to the employees. The employees should have, this is going to be a news, I'm sure there's going to be a news for a lot of employees. The employees have a right to ask their employers a labor condition application for the H-1B workers. That's number one. Number two, and sometimes when they getting the green card process for the perm processing or even immigrant petition processing, the employees have certain rights to keep certain records. The employer is obligated to provide them. That's the obligation of employer. And the second thing is employee. Sometimes when they're working, they should know, the details of the project and the roles and responsibilities. And they should also have the copies of the timesheets, and the timesheets has to be approved by the manager. And they should keep copies like those things. And the other thing is sometimes they might want to have the pictures there that they're working with the client, and basic information, and even the pay stubs. See, the other problem most of the times what the employers and employees face in America, that these employees working in different states, whatever the state which they mentioned in LCA, if they're not working in that state, if they're in a different state, the employer is obligated to pay the tax of that state too. So, tax implications on the employer and employee, and insurance obligations, and record keeping obligations on the employer and employee. And so as even the vendors and even the clients, they should have record of everything, because if an employee is coming and working, they should know who is this guy, which company's employee is he, and basic information like any contracts they have entered with the vendors or with the final clients. All those records, they should keep it, who the clients as well. So these are mandatory, obligations on the employer and employee and even the clients.
Yes. Mr. Kaveti, let's say that the officer has successfully come and they've decided to visit their site, and they actually did. So what is the typical information they ask? Like, can you give us any sample questions if possible?
The first thing is, they will see, before they even come, they've already done their research. Who's the employer, whether the employee is working on an H-1B, whether the H-1B is approved or is it pending. They would like to see any immigration violations, whether the employer is committed or whether the employee has committed any immigration violations, and are there any criminal cases on employee, stuff like that. And the other thing is, sometimes when you're overseas, let's say the employees are in overseas, they've come to consulates in India, they have to go through a fingerprint. And even through the fingerprint, they'll find out if there are any criminal violations or any crimes pending on them. So they will see whether there are any immigration violations. And sometimes they will even see the resume which you have provided or the employment verification letters you have provided by the employee, whether they're bona fide, whether they're genuine. They will check up all of that. So these are when whoever is watching your show, especially employees or employers, if you guys are indicating that you worked in certain places, make sure that your references are very clear, and your manager's numbers and emails are very clear, and let them know that if you've gone to get your visa stamped in your home country, that the employers, managers, or even colleagues sometimes, let them know that there's a FDNS visit would be there, so that they are aware of it, that you guys are working there. These days, sometimes what is happening after COVID, people are working from home. So you might not even have an interaction going to the client's place. But on meetings, you're always meeting people on Zoom or different technologies. So, your team would know each other. So get their phone numbers, get their email addresses, inform them that yours is under the administrative processing, so that they will have a heads up if anybody inquires about the project or about the employee or the employer. At least they get some positive feedback so that your visas gets approved.
Yes. Mr. Kaveti, my question to you is that you did say that the FDNS visits if there is any national threat for the security of the country. So let's say, you just said that sometimes they do come to check if they're actually married or not. And if, if they're caught lying, or if they've caught like manipulating the whole information, what kind of consequences will that person face? So let's say, will that delay their green card processing, or will they be deported back to the country? What's the whole situation?
Very interesting question, Shivani, you asked me. This is not pertaining to the employer-employee, but for the people who get married. The US citizen was sponsored. If they see that it is not a bona fide marriage, the US citizen will be in big trouble because it's a felony if you're lying to the immigration, and it's a marriage fraud, it's a felony. Felony means you can go to jail more than 1 year. And two, they will revoke the visa of the beneficiary, and they will definitely deport. And there is a jail term, and there's also a financial penalty. There were cases even they have penalized $25,000, and they have sent people to jail for more than 1 year. So it's a very serious thing. You can't, play with immigration in this country because it's a federal law, and you're defrauding the federal government, sovereign. They will not take it easily because, lying to a sovereign, lying to a federal government anywhere in the world, lying to the government, it's lying to the king. So it's a serious penalties, no defenses.
Yes.
So, they will give you an opportunity. Sometimes they might not have proper information. Sometimes they have come to visit you, and husband and wife, they're not there. It's closed doors. They've checked up next door, and sometimes they have not answered them properly. And sometimes people also have 2 to 3 houses in this country. Husband and wife is working in 2 different countries, 2 different states. They might not have come and lived in the place where they've shown. They will not straight penalize them, but they will give an opportunity, because burden of proof is on you to prove your bona fides. So it's not going to be a straight sending them to jail or something. They will give an opportunity to you under the due process of law. That is called constitutional procedural due process and substantive due process. This is the Constitution of US, which has given notice and hearing. They will give you a hearing. They will notify you, and then after getting enough information from you, they will penalize you if they see that it's a fraud.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, did you or your law firm anytime deal with issues with FDNS, or anything related to that?
Yes, our firm has done it. Our other partners have done it. Our firm has handled such cases. Definitely, yes. It's not that easy when it goes to that level because the officers in immigration already have certain iota of doubt, and they have some probable cause. This is a word which is used in the law. They have some probable cause. Otherwise, they won't, normally penalize. But if the relationships are bona fide, if the petition is bona fide, and if there's genuinity is there, definitely we can, our firm or any lawyers, immigration lawyers, can handle it. It's a specialized area.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, let's talk about the situation. So, in this kind of situations during the site visits, how important is it for the attorney or a lawyer to be present to represent the employee or the employer?
The first thing is the employer has to, retain and disclose all the information to the counsel, their lawyer. And, it's always helpful when there's an attorney present because, normally the questions posed by the officers, instead of asking the beneficiary or the employer or employee or client, the lawyers can handle such questions. And because the lawyers will, make sure, because many times what happens, the clients are scared, because these are federal officers. When they're coming and visiting you, the clients are scared, and being scared, you might not answer them properly in terms of if you might not understand sometimes what they're asking. It is always helpful for for the employers to have an attorney present, and
Yes.
there are certain protections are given when the attorney is there with the client.
Yes. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Kaveti, for tuning on to the show. We covered a very important topic today. I'm pretty sure the viewers have enjoyed it. Thank you for the viewers for tuning in. You're watching Sakshi TV with me, Shivani Raj.
Thank you, Shivani.